Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we're drifting into one of history's longest and quietest tragedies, a war that didn't end in a single scream, but faded slowly through fear, ambition, and exhaustion. Tonight we'll follow the complete story of the Peloponnesian War, a 27-year struggle between Athens and Sparta that reshaped the ancient Greek world without ever truly healing it. This is not a story of heroes charging into battle or victories celebrated with cheers. It's a story of cities growing tired, of power slipping through careful hands, of walls that once promised safety becoming silent witnesses to hunger and loss. We'll move through marble streets and moonlit harbors, through whispered councils and quiet seas, where ships disappeared one by one and certainty dissolved into memory. This is the calm history of how Athens lost the sea, how Sparta learned it, and how an entire civilization paid the price for fear of rising power. So before you get comfortable, take a gentle moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if these deep sleep history stories help you find peace, sleep better, or simply reflect on our shared journey through time. Now, close your eyes, let the world soften around you, and allow the long war of ancient Greece to drift quietly into the background, where history becomes calm, distant, and ready to rest. Close your eyes for a moment and let the noise of the present quietly fade. Imagine the soft breath of wind brushing against stone that has already witnessed centuries of human hope and fear. You are standing beneath the marble columns of the Parthenon, high above the city of Athens, in the year 431 BCE. The air is calm, almost deceptively peaceful. No armies are marching yet, no ships are burning on the horizon. And yet, something invisible has already begun to move. It is the quiet approach of a war that will last nearly 30 years, not because it is loud, but because it is slow, inevitable, and deeply human. Greece at this time is not a single nation, but a fragile constellation of city-states, or polis, each fiercely proud of its independence, its customs, and its way of life. Many of them will be drawn into the conflict ahead, willingly or not, but two names already cast the longest shadows. One is Athens, luminous and restless, its power flowing outward across the sea. The other is Sparta, silent and disciplined, its strength rooted in land, tradition, and restraint. Athens is a city that breathes movement. Its harbors are crowded with ships, its markets filled with voices from distant shores. Ideas travel here as freely as goods. Democracy, still young and fragile, shapes the way Athenians speak, argue, and dream. Art and philosophy are not luxuries, but reflections of how the city understands itself. To walk through Athens is to feel a constant hum of ambition, curiosity, and confidence. The Athenians believe, deeply and sincerely, that progress is not only possible, but necessary. Across the Greek world, their influence grows not just through conquest, but through admiration, alliances, and dependence. Sparta, by contrast, is a city that turns inward. It does not invite the world to admire it, nor does it wish to be understood. Spartan life is shaped by discipline from the moment of birth. Comfort is viewed with suspicion. Speech is brief, emotion restrained, and obedience valued above all else. Where Athens trusts in walls, fleets, and clever minds, Sparta trusts in training, endurance, and the silent strength of its warriors. The Spartans do not seek expansion for its own sake. They seek stability, and they fear anything that threatens the delicate balance holding their society together. For years, these two worlds have coexisted uneasily. Allies have been chosen, treaties signed, and grievances quietly remembered. Beneath polite words, tension has been growing, not because either side desires war, but because both sense that the other is becoming something dangerous. Athens sees itself as the natural leader of Greece, guiding smaller states through protection and prosperity. Sparta watches this rise with a tightening grip, not on weapons, but on control. It is here, in this narrowing space between confidence and fear, that our story truly begins. Somewhere among the stone steps and shaded colonnades, a quiet observer takes note. Thucydides does not shout warnings or sing heroic songs. He watches, listens, and records. He understands that the greatest forces in history are often invisible at first. Fear, pride, and the stories people tell themselves about power. As the sun lowers behind the Parthenon and shadows stretch across Athens, the war has not yet started, but its heartbeat can already be felt, slow and steady, waiting for the moment when fear finally outweighs restraint. As night settles gently over Greece, the story drifts away from marble temples and into the quieter spaces where power truly takes shape. Long before the first spear is raised, long before any city declares war, alliances begin to harden like stone beneath still water. After the Persian invasions, the Greek world is exhausted, but changed forever. Cities that once fought side by side now look at one another differently. Athens emerges from these wars not merely as a survivor, but as a leader with momentum. Its fleet dominates the Aegean, its influence spreads through the Delian League, and what was once presented as mutual protection slowly becomes something heavier. Tribute replaces voluntary contribution. Ships built for defense begin to serve authority. To Athens, this feels natural, even necessary. Order must be maintained, stability must be enforced. Prosperity, once tasted, must be protected. But power, when it grows quietly, rarely feels quiet to those watching from afar. In Sparta, this transformation is observed with unease rather than envy. The Spartans do not measure strength by ships or silver, but by balance. Their society is built on control, over land, over population, over fear itself. They rule not just citizens, but a vast subject class, and any disruption to order threatens the very foundation of their way of life. Athens, with its restless energy and expanding reach, represents more than a rival. It represents uncertainty. And uncertainty is something Sparta has been trained to fear. Year after year, reports arrive. Another city aligns with Athens, another harbor opens its gates, another tribute is demanded. None of these moments alone are enough to justify war, but together they form a pattern that feels impossible to ignore. The Spartans debate slowly, cautiously, bound by tradition and hesitation. They do not rush toward conflict, they wait, watching as Athens grows more confident, more secure, and less willing to restrain itself. The fear is not that Athens intends to attack Sparta directly. The fear is deeper than that.
It is the fear that Athens is changing the rules of the Greek world, replacing old balances with a new order that leaves no room for Sparta's rigid stability. Meanwhile, Athens continues to tell itself a different story. In the assembly, speeches echo with the language of justice, leadership, and destiny. The empire, Athenians believe, is not tyranny but responsibility. They convince themselves that their power benefits everyone, that resistance is ignorance, and that opposition is dangerous precisely because it threatens peace. This belief is sincere, and that sincerity makes it more dangerous. Because when power believes itself righteous, it stops questioning its own limits. Between these two narratives, Spartan fear and Athenian confidence, a quiet tension tightens. Treaties are signed, then stretched. Promises are remembered differently by each side. Minor disputes flare, then fade, leaving behind resentment rather than resolution. The war is still unseen, but it is no longer distant. It has become a presence in conversation, in rumor, in the careful pauses between words. Somewhere in the background, the historian listens. He understands that wars do not begin with hatred alone, but with fear left unspoken. As the Greek world drifts toward conflict, it is not anger that drives events forward, but the slow erosion of trust. Each side waits for the other to blink first, and in that waiting, the space for peace quietly disappears.
There comes a moment in every long conflict when silence itself becomes dangerous. In the years leading up to the Peloponnesian War, that moment arrives quietly, without ceremony, without a single dramatic event to announce it. It slips in through councils and conversations, through pauses that last just a little too long. Greece does not fall into war because one side suddenly desires violence. It drifts into war because fear, once tolerated, finally demands action. In Sparta, debate reaches its slow and solemn conclusion. The elders have listened long enough. Reports of Athenian expansion are no longer abstract possibilities, but lived realities. Allies whisper their worries. Neutral cities feel pressure to choose sides. Each delay now feels less like caution and more like weakness. For a society built on discipline and control, the idea of losing the initiative becomes unbearable. War is not chosen out of rage, but out of the belief that waiting any longer will be worse. Athens, meanwhile, senses the change in the air, but misreads it. Confidence has hardened into certainty. The city believes its power is already accepted as fact, that resistance will eventually fade beneath prosperity and order. When warnings arrive, they are debated, refined, and politely dismissed. The Athenians are not blind, they are convinced that their system works, convinced that their leadership is necessary, convinced that fear, if it exists, belongs to others. This asymmetry, Spartan anxiety against Athenian assurance, creates a final imbalance. The spark that ignites the war is not a single insult or broken treaty, but the realization on both sides that compromise now carries a cost too high to pay. To yield is to admit decline. To restrain is to surrender momentum. And so restraint quietly steps aside. As declarations are made and preparations begin, there is still no celebration, no triumph. The mood is heavy, almost reluctant. This is not a war fueled by hatred, but by resignation. People on both sides sense that something precious is being lost, though they cannot yet name it. The Greek world stands at the edge of a conflict that will test not just armies, but ideas, democracy and discipline, freedom and order, ambition and fear. In the background, the historian continues his careful work. He does not glorify the moment war begins. He treats it as a warning. He understands that the true cause of the war is not found in speeches or battles, but in a single, quiet truth. When one power grows and another grows afraid, the space for peace narrows until it disappears. As the first steps toward war are taken, night settles once more over Greece. The temples remain standing. The seas are calm. Life, for now, continues. But beneath the stillness, history has shifted direction. And once it begins to move, it will not stop for nearly 30 years.
On the surface of the Aegean Sea, moonlight scatters softly across slow-moving waves. Athenian triremes glide almost silently, their oars dipping in steady rhythm, their hulls cutting through water that reflects both beauty and unease. To the people of Athens, these ships are symbols of safety, connection, and order. To Sparta, watching from afar, each ship is a reminder that the balance of power is no longer what it once was. Long before the Peloponnesian War becomes a clash of armies, it exists as a quiet competition between alliances, each born from fear, memory, and the desire to survive in a fragile Greek world. The Delian League begins with noble intentions. After the Persian Wars, many Greek cities are exhausted, vulnerable, and wary of future invasions. Athens offers protection, not through walls, but through the sea. Member states contribute ships or money, and together they promise to defend one another against external threats. In its early years, the League feels voluntary, almost hopeful. Meetings are held, decisions are discussed, and Athens presents itself not as a ruler, but as a guardian. But power rarely remains static. Over time, contributions in ships are replaced by monetary tribute. It is easier, cities tell themselves, to pay than to build fleets. Athens accepts this willingly, efficiently, and without apology. The League's treasury, once kept on the sacred island of Delos, is quietly transferred to Athens itself. The justification is practical. Athens can protect it better. But the symbolism is unmistakable. What was shared now has a center. What was collective now has a voice. From this moment, the Delian League begins to feel less like an alliance and more like an empire in all but name. Athens uses the tribute to strengthen its navy, beautify its city, and reinforce its dominance at sea. The ships that glide beneath the moon are built not only for defense, but for control. For many member cities, leaving the League is no longer a real option. Attempts to withdraw are met with pressure, then force. Order is maintained, peace is preserved, but at a cost that is felt quietly, unevenly, and deeply. Across the Greek mainland, Sparta observes this transformation with growing concern. Sparta does not command the seas, nor does it wish to. Its strength lies in land, alliances rooted in tradition, and a network of states bound together by shared fear of domination. The Peloponnesian League, under Spartan leadership, is older, looser, and built on mutual obligation rather than tribute. Sparta does not demand silver, it demands loyalty. Yet loyalty, too, can be fragile. As Athens' influence spreads, neutral cities find themselves trapped between two worlds. To align with Athens offers security and prosperity, but also submission. To stand with Sparta offers tradition and restraint, but little protection at sea. Each polis hesitates, weighing not ideals, but survival. This quiet pulling apart of the Greek world deepens the unease. It is not hatred that grows, but anxiety.
Athens sees its actions as necessary, even benevolent. Sparta sees the same actions as destabilizing, even dangerous. Neither side believes itself the aggressor. And so, beneath calm seas and moonlit skies, alliances harden, fears deepen, and the shape of war slowly takes form, long before the first battle is ever fought.
As the moon continues its slow journey across the Aegean sky, the quiet machinery of power turns inward, toward numbers, silver, and obligation. What began as protection now acquires a rhythm of payment. The Delian League, once a promise against Persian return, settles into a routine that feels increasingly permanent. Each year, tribute arrives in Athens from distant islands and coastal cities. Coins counted, records kept, expectations enforced. To many contributors, the payments feel small at first, almost reasonable. After all, Athens maintains the fleet. Athens stands guard. Athens absorbs the risk. But over time, something subtle shifts. Tribute is no longer framed as a choice, but as a duty. The protection never expires. The payments never stop. When the League's treasury is moved from Delos to Athens, the change is explained calmly, efficiently, and without drama. The sacred island is vulnerable, Athens argues. The city has walls, ships, and guardians. The logic is sound, yet symbols matter. With the treasury beneath Athenian control, the League's heartbeat moves inland. Decisions become easier for some, impossible for others. Athens begins to fund not only ships, but stone, temples, walls, and public works that transform the city into a vision of order and beauty. To Athenians, this is proof that the system works. Tribute becomes culture, silver becomes stability. But to many allies, the sight is unsettling. Their payments no longer feel like shared defense, they feel like distance. Requests to reduce tribute are met with procedure. Complaints are answered with patience that feels thin. Attempts to leave the League are treated as threats to collective security. Athens does not call this domination, it calls it necessity. Peace, after all, must be maintained. Across Greece, stories travel faster than ships. Cities whisper about revolts that fail and consequences that follow. The lesson spreads quietly. Membership is permanent. The cost of protection is obedience. Meanwhile, on the Peloponnesian mainland, Sparta listens. It hears not just the facts, but the fear beneath them. The Peloponnesian League is different by design, less centralized, less efficient, but also less absolute. Sparta does not collect tribute in silver, it relies on obligation, shared threat, and tradition. Yet tradition, too, feels fragile in the face of Athenian wealth. As neutral cities watch Athens grow richer and more confident, they calculate risks anew. To remain unaligned becomes increasingly dangerous. To choose Sparta means embracing restraint without reward. To choose Athens means surrendering autonomy for safety. The Greek world does not divide overnight. It tilts slowly, city by city, harbor by harbor. Each decision deepens the divide. Sparta does not envy Athenian riches. It fears what those riches make possible. Wealth buys ships, walls, and influence, but it also buys patience. Athens can afford to wait, to pressure, to outlast resistance. This asymmetry unsettles Sparta profoundly. The war, in Spartan eyes, is no longer about honor or rivalry. It is about survival in a world where power now flows through treasuries as much as through spears. And so, beneath calm skies and measured debates, the price of protection becomes clear. What is paid in silver today
may be paid in blood tomorrow. The Greek world senses this truth, even if it refuses to speak it aloud. The sea remains peaceful, the accounts remain balanced, but the quiet certainty grows stronger. This arrangement cannot endure forever.
As the years pass, the Greek world finds itself growing quieter, but not calmer. The silence is heavy with calculation. Neutral city-states begin to feel the invisible pressure pressing in from all sides, not through threats spoken aloud, but through expectations quietly assumed. To remain unaligned now requires constant explanation. Every harbor visit, every treaty renewal, every trade agreement is examined through the lens of loyalty. Athens does not demand allegiance openly, but its presence is felt everywhere the sea touches land. Sparta does not issue ultimatums, but its reputation for resolve and retaliation looms in every landlocked valley. The space between these two powers becomes narrower with each passing season. For smaller polis, choice is no longer philosophical. It is logistical, economic, and existential. To lean toward Athens means access to protection, trade routes, and stability enforced by the fleet. It also means accepting oversight, tribute, and the quiet loss of autonomy. To lean toward Sparta means preserving tradition, local authority, and restraint, but at the cost of exposure, especially to maritime pressure. Remaining neutral means hoping that geography, reputation, or luck will delay the inevitable. Many try, few succeed. Stories circulate of cities punished not for rebellion, but for hesitation, of alliances formed not out of belief, but out of exhaustion. The Greek world begins to divide not with sharp lines, but with frayed edges. Families argue, councils stall, leaders hesitate, knowing that every decision will anger someone powerful. Athens, watching this fragmentation, believes it is preventing chaos. Its actions are framed as stabilizing measures, meant to protect the many from the few who would disrupt order. Sparta, observing the same events, sees encroachment. It sees a system that leaves no room for balance, only submission. Each side believes it is acting defensively. Each side feels cornered. This shared sense of being threatened creates a strange symmetry. No one believes they are choosing war. Everyone believes war is choosing them. Diplomatic missions continue, but their tone changes. Words grow careful, rehearsed, and heavy with implication. Treaties are honored in form, but hollowed in spirit. Promises exist, but trust does not. In this environment, even small disputes become dangerous. A disagreement between minor allies echoes far beyond its origin. A border conflict feels like a test. A delayed payment feels like defiance. The system has become too tense to absorb shock. And so, slowly, almost gently, the final realization settles across Greece. This divided world cannot sustain itself indefinitely. The alliances are no longer flexible. The fears are no longer hypothetical. The power structures are too deeply invested to step back without loss. War in this moment is not yet a roar. It is a quiet closing of doors, a narrowing of choices, a shared understanding that the path forward has already been chosen by years of pressure and pride. Under the same moon that once reflected peaceful fleets, the Greek world prepares itself, not with excitement, but with weary acceptance. The sea remains calm. The land remains still, but beneath both, history gathers its weight,
And with that weight comes the certainty that the war everyone feared yet no one openly desired is now closer than ever before.
While Sparta gathers its heavy-armed hoplites and prepares to march across familiar roads of dust and stone, Athens pauses. In the assembly, voices rise and fall, but one vision slowly settles over the city like evening light. Pericles, calm and deliberate, proposes a plan that feels almost unnatural to a world shaped by land battles and heroic charges. Athens, he argues, should not meet Sparta where Sparta is strongest. There will be no desperate stand in open fields, no attempt to match discipline with discipline. Instead, Athens will retreat inward, behind its long walls, and outward across the sea. It is a strategy of patience, not pride, of endurance, not glory. The city listens, uneasy but trusting. As the first campaigning season approaches, the countryside of Attica begins to empty. Farmers leave their homes, carrying what they can, moving slowly toward the city. The sound is not panic, but displacement. Cartwheels on dry earth, footsteps, quiet conversations carried by wind. Inside the walls, Athens grows crowded. Homes fill, public spaces become temporary shelters, and the rhythm of daily life changes. Beyond the walls, the land waits. When Spartan forces arrive, they move methodically, not in fury, but in routine. Fields are burned, orchards cut, smoke rising in thin columns that drift lazily into the sky. From the city, Athenians watch without responding. There is no charge, no clash, only distance, only smoke. The walls hold, the city remains silent. Pericles' strategy asks the people to accept loss without reaction, to trust that time and sea will wear down the enemy more surely than battle. As Sparta withdraws at the end of the season, Athens responds, not on land, but by water. The fleet slips out, sails catching light, oars dipping in familiar rhythm. Raids along the Peloponnesian coast are brief and distant, felt more as echoes than events. Then winter comes, and both sides retreat. This pattern repeats. Summer brings movement, smoke, and marching feet. Winter brings quiet, repairs, and waiting. War becomes a rhythm rather than a moment, not a single explosion, but a cycle. From afar, it almost feels restrained. The sea remains calm, the city endures, and Pericles' vision holds, for now. When the long walls close behind them, Athens becomes something it has never fully been before, a city that must learn patience as a daily practice. The countryside empties into stone corridors and narrow streets, and with each passing day, the sounds of the city change. There are more footsteps now, softer and more constant, echoing in shaded passageways. Voices overlap, not in argument, but in adjustment. Families sharing space, neighbors negotiating silence, strangers learning the rhythms of one another's presence. The air feels heavier, warmed by bodies and breath, carrying the smell of cooking fires and the faint salt of the nearby sea. From within the walls, the war feels distant yet inescapable. It arrives not as a clash of arms, but as a slow compression of space and time. Fields lie unattended beyond the gates, visible from the heights, their familiar greens dulled by smoke that drifts in thin layers across the horizon. There is no rush to respond. Pericles has asked the city to endure rather than react, to trust that stillness can be a form of strength.
And so the days settle into repetition. At dawn, the city stirs. Markets open briefly, then close. Ships come and go, their movements steady and reassuring, bringing grain, news, and the quiet promise that the sea remains open. Inside homes and public spaces, time stretches. Children learn to play quietly. Elders sit longer in the shade. Conversations circle familiar topics and then return to silence. At night, the city listens. Beyond the walls, there are distant sounds, sometimes the crackle of fire carried by wind, sometimes nothing at all. Smoke is seen more often than soldiers. The absence of battle becomes its own presence, a constant reminder that restraint is a choice made again each day. As the Spartan army withdraws at the end of the campaigning season, relief does not arrive as celebration, it arrives as exhale. The city does not rush outward, it waits. Repairs begin, routines resume. When the fleet sails out to strike the Peloponnesian coast, it does so without drama, like a practiced motion rather than a declaration. The war, for those inside the walls, becomes a sequence of sounds, the creak of ships' timbers, the low murmur of assemblies, the wind moving across stone at night. Summer returns, and with it the same pattern. The Spartans come, burn, and leave. Athens watches, endures, and responds by sea. Winter quiets everything. Snow does not fall here, but cold does, settling into bones and habits alike. The repetition dulls sharp fear into something steadier. The city adapts. Yet beneath this calm there is tension, not explosive but cumulative. Waiting itself becomes a burden. The strategy demands trust not only in leadership but in time, and time, though slow, never pauses. The walls hold, the fleet moves, the city waits. And in this waiting, Athens begins to understand the true cost of a war designed to be endured rather than won quickly.
As the war settles into its early years, it no longer feels like a single unfolding story, but like a pattern that repeats with gentle inevitability. Summer arrives, and with it the same distant movements. Spartan forces cross into Attica once more, their presence announced not by battle cries, but by smoke rising slowly from fields left behind. The sound reaches Athens late, softened by distance and wind. Inside the walls, there is no rush. The city has learned this rhythm. The gates remain closed. Life continues in compressed form, meals shared, water carried, voices lowered. From the heights, Athenians watch familiar hills change color, greens turning to ash and brown. There is sadness in the sight, but also acceptance. This is the price of endurance, Pericles reminds them, spoken and unspoken. When summer fades, the Spartans withdraw, as they always do. Their strength is bound to the season, to harvest cycles and obligations at home. Athens does not pursue them across the land. Instead, the sea responds. Ships move quietly from harbor to horizon, not to seek glory, but to apply pressure at a distance. Coastal settlements along the Peloponnese feel brief disturbances, oars in water, footsteps on sand, then silence again. These actions are measured, almost restrained, designed to remind rather than to destroy. Winter follows, bringing stillness. The countryside rests, scarred but quiet. Inside the city, people breathe more easily, though the crowding remains. Repairs are made, supplies are counted. The rhythm of war pauses, not ending, but waiting. This cycle repeats year after year until time itself seems to blur. The war is no longer shocking, it is familiar. Its sounds, wind through the long walls, the creak of ships,
the distant crackle of fire blend into daily life. Athens becomes a city trained in waiting, and Sparta a force constrained by seasons. Neither side delivers a decisive blow, neither side retreats. The conflict stretches not because it is fierce, but because it is balanced. From a distance, it almost appears calm. Yet beneath this calm lies erosion. Fields burned too often do not recover quickly. Crowded cities grow weary. Patience, once a strategy, becomes a test. Still, in these early years, the structure holds. The sea remains Athens' ally. The land remains Sparta's domain. And between them lies time, slow, repetitive, and quietly relentless. The war moves forward not in leaps, but in cycles, like waves touching shore and withdrawing again. For those living through it, the danger is not a single moment of violence, but the gradual wearing down of certainty. Summer, smoke, withdrawal. Winter, quiet, repair, again and again. And in this steady repetition, the Peloponnesian War finds its early shape, not as a blaze, but a long, measured breath that seems as though it could continue forever.
But then, something arrives that no strategy had accounted for. No army marches with it. No banners announce its coming. It slips quietly through the gates of Athens, carried not by enemies, but by people seeking safety. Within the long walls, the city has grown crowded beyond memory. Homes overflow, courtyards fill, temporary shelters press against temples and public spaces. The air, once alive with debate and movement, now feels heavy, unmoving. Breath lingers, heat settles, and in this closeness, an invisible enemy begins to move. At first, it is only discomfort, fatigue that does not pass, a cough that echoes too long in the night. Then the rhythm of the city changes again, not with marching feet or distant smoke, but with pauses, longer silences between words, slower steps, doors that remain closed. Athens, which had learned to endure the war by waiting, now must wait through something far less predictable. The illness spreads without pattern, touching the strong and the weak alike. Thucydides, himself present and watching, records not numbers, but impressions. He writes of bodies burning from within, of thirst that cannot be quenched, of restlessness that steals sleep. Yet what lingers most is not the symptoms themselves, but the atmosphere they create. Fear moves faster than reason. Temples fill with quiet prayers, then empty again when hope fades. Makeshift spaces become places of care, not ordered like hospitals, but improvised, overwhelmed, filled with whispered instructions and exhausted hands. The war outside the walls fades into background noise. The real struggle is now inside, breath by breath, night by night. Sounds change. Instead of distant fires and ships, there are coughs, murmurs, and the soft rustle of movement in the dark. People avoid one another not out of hostility, but helpless caution. Familiar faces disappear from daily routines. The city's patience, once its greatest strength, begins to fray. The belief that endurance will be rewarded feels harder to hold on to when suffering arrives without meaning or warning. Even leadership is not spared. Pericles,
the voice of restraint and long vision, falls ill. His presence, once steady and reassuring, fades from public life. With him goes not just a man, but a sense of direction. Athens does not collapse in chaos, but something essential shifts. Rules feel distant, customs soften. People act not with cruelty, but with quiet desperation. The city that had trusted walls and time now confronts something neither can stop. And so, beneath the same walls that once promised safety, Athens enters a new phase of the war, one defined not by strategy, but by vulnerability. The enemy is unseen, the struggle is intimate, and the night grows longer than before.
As the illness lingers within the walls, Athens begins to feel unfamiliar to itself. The city does not fall into sudden chaos. Instead, it drifts. Customs that once guided behavior soften quietly, like stone worn smooth by constant touch. The laws remain written. The assemblies still gather when they can, but the spirit behind them feels thinner. People move more slowly, not only from fatigue, but from uncertainty. When tomorrow is unclear, rules lose some of their weight. In the crowded spaces of the city, care becomes improvised and uneven. Some are tended to with devotion, others watched from a distance, not out of cruelty, but fear. Faith, once a steady anchor, wavers. Prayers rise in temples and private rooms alike, yet when relief does not follow, doubt settles in their place. The gods feel distant, not absent, but quiet. Rituals continue, though less confidently, as if repeated from memory rather than conviction. The war outside the walls seems almost irrelevant now. Sparta still comes and goes with the seasons, but the city barely notices. Smoke on the horizon no longer commands attention when suffering is immediate and close. Leadership, too, feels altered. With Pericles weakened and then gone, Athens loses more than a guiding voice. It loses a sense of continuity. Decisions are still made, but they feel reactive rather than deliberate. The long vision that once framed endurance begins to fade, replaced by short-term concern and quiet resignation. Thucydides observes this shift carefully. He notes not dramatic breakdowns, but subtle changes, how people stop fearing consequences when suffering feels arbitrary, how social bonds loosen when survival becomes personal rather than collective. Yet even here, there is no wild violence, no theatrical collapse. What emerges is something more unsettling, a gentle erosion. The city's shared patience thins. Trust becomes selective. People help where they can, withdraw where they must. Nights feel longer. The soundscape of Athens changes again. Fewer voices argue, more voices whisper. Footsteps pass without greeting. Silence fills spaces once alive with debate. And still, the illness runs its course, indifferent to morality or status. In this environment, the war takes on a new meaning. It is no longer just a test of strategy or endurance, but of identity. Athens had believed itself exceptional, guided by reason, protected by walls and sea. Now it confronts fragility without explanation. The realization is not shouted, it settles quietly, like dust after movement stops. When the sickness finally begins to loosen its grip, the city does not immediately recover. Loss remains visible in empty spaces and altered routines. Athens has endured, but it has also changed. Something essential has been revealed. Strength can be patient, intelligent, and still vulnerable. The enemy that entered without weapons has reshaped the city more deeply than any army. And as the war waits beyond the walls, Athens stands altered, uncertain, and profoundly aware that time alone does not heal everything.
When the sickness finally begins to loosen its hold, it does not leave with ceremony or relief. It fades unevenly, retreating from some streets while lingering in others, until one day the city realizes that the noise of coughing has thinned, that the nights are no longer broken by the same restless movement. What remains is a silence different from before, not the silence of waiting for war, but the silence that follows loss. Athens does not celebrate survival, it takes inventory. Empty spaces speak louder than words. Homes that once overflowed now feel hollow. Familiar routines resume, but they move around absences that cannot be filled. The city breathes again, but cautiously, as if unsure whether the air can be trusted. The war, still unfolding beyond the walls, returns slowly to attention, yet it no longer feels like the same conflict. Something essential has shifted. The long strategy of patience that once defined Athens feels heavier now, less certain. Without Pericles, the vision that framed endurance has lost its anchor. Leadership continues, laws remain, assemblies gather, but the sense of direction is altered. Decisions feel narrower, hope feels quieter. The city has learned that walls cannot stop everything, that time does not guarantee protection. Thucydides observes the aftermath with the same restraint he applied to the illness itself. He writes of resilience, but not triumph, of survival, but not renewal. The social fabric, though intact, has stretched. Trust does not vanish, but it becomes selective. Generosity remains, but it is cautious. The shared confidence that once animated Athens, the belief that reason and preparation could master any challenge, has been tempered. The city does not descend into despair, yet it no longer carries the same certainty. This change shapes everything that follows. As the war continues, the Athenians approach it with a different posture. Endurance is no longer idealized, it is endured. Sacrifice is no longer abstract, it is remembered. The rhythm of seasons, campaign, withdrawal, winter returns, but it feels slower now, weighted by memory. The smoke on distant hills no longer feels temporary. The waiting inside the walls no longer feels purely strategic. Even the sea, once a symbol of control and freedom, feels more distant, less reassuring. And yet Athens remains. The city adapts, as it always has. Markets reopen more fully. Art and conversation return, subdued but persistent. Life asserts itself quietly, not in defiance of loss, but alongside it. This coexistence becomes the new reality. The plague does not end the war, nor does it decide it, but it reshapes the people who must carry the war forward. Athens enters the next phase of conflict changed, less confident, more aware, and deeply marked by an enemy that arrived without warning and left without resolution. As night settles again over the city, the walls stand as they always have, but their meaning is altered. They no longer promise safety, only shelter. And in that subtle shift, the true legacy of the invisible enemy endures.
After years of smoke, waiting, illness, and loss, the Greek world begins to slow its pace, not because the war has been resolved, but because the people who carry it are exhausted.
cities on both sides move with less urgency. The seasons still turn, but they feel heavier now, as if time itself has grown tired of repeating the same motions. In Athens, the memory of the plague lingers quietly in empty spaces and cautious habits. In Sparta, the long campaigns have taken their toll, stretching a society built for discipline but not for endless absence. Neither side speaks openly of defeat. Instead, there's a shared, unspoken recognition that continuing without pause risks unraveling everything that remains. It is in this atmosphere of fatigue that the idea of peace begins to sound less like surrender and more like necessity. Voices that once argued for endurance now speak of limits. Messengers travel more frequently, their journeys slower, their words chosen carefully. The war has proven that strength alone cannot guarantee control, and patience alone cannot promise victory. Slowly, almost reluctantly, negotiations take shape. At the center of these efforts stands Nicias, a figure associated not with ambition, but with caution. He does not promise glory, he offers rest. The proposal that emerges is modest in its hope and narrow in its scope. A truce, not an ending. A pause measured not in days, but in years. 10 years, the agreement suggests, during which old positions will be restored, prisoners exchanged, and the constant rhythm of campaigning allowed to fade. When the peace is announced, it does not arrive with celebration. There are no grand processions, no sense that history has been resolved. Instead, there's a quiet exhale across the Greek world. Markets reopen more confidently. Ships travel routes that had grown uncertain. Festivals return, not as declarations of triumph, but as reminders of normalcy. In Athens, theaters fill again. Stories are told not of battles, but of gods, families, and human flaws. Narratives that allow audiences to feel something other than strain. On the streets, conversations grow longer, less guarded. The soundscape changes. Less talk of strategy, more talk of trade, weather, and routine. Sparta, too, adjusts. Armies stand down. Young men return to fields and training grounds, relearning rhythms interrupted by war. The land breathes. Yet beneath this calm, nothing truly settles. The peace holds because everyone wants it to hold, not because trust has been rebuilt. Old grievances remain carefully unspoken. Alliances shift subtly. Some cities feel the agreement protects them, others feel that freezes injustice in place. The war has paused, but its memory has not softened. In both Athens and Sparta, there's a sense that this quiet is temporary, like the stillness before another season turns. The world moves forward, but cautiously, as if afraid to wake something that has merely fallen asleep. And so, Greece rests, not in confidence, but in fragile relief, taking a long breath between storms, unsure of how long the silence will last.
With the truce in place, life begins to re-enter the Greek world, not with confidence, but with caution. The peace does not erase memory. It simply creates space around it. In Athens, streets grow a little louder, though never as loud as before. Merchants return to familiar routes, counting risks as carefully as profits. Ships cross the Aegean with renewed purpose, their sails carrying goods and rumors in equal measure. Trade resumes, not as celebration, but as reassurance, a sign that the world has not fully closed. In workshops and homes, routines slowly reform. Tools are taken down. Plans postponed during war are reconsidered. The city relearns how to move without urgency. Public life, too, stirs awake. Festivals reappear on the calendar, modest at first, then more assured.
Theaters open their doors, inviting citizens to sit together again in shared silence and shared attention. On stage, stories unfold that speak indirectly to what has been endured, tales of fragile truces, flawed heroes, and the limits of power. Laughter returns, cautious and brief, then steadier. For a few hours at a time, the audience is allowed to forget the weight of recent years. In Sparta, the shift is quieter but just as real. The rhythms of training and agriculture regain their balance. Young men return to drills that feel less urgent, more familiar. Elders speak of stability, of the value of restraint proven once again. There is pride in having endured, but also relief in standing down. Across Greece, cities test the peace like one tests thin ice, carefully, listening for cracks. Alliances are revisited in softer tones. Envoys travel with fewer guards. Border disputes are discussed rather than assumed. The world appears to be healing, not fully, but enough to function. Yet this return to normal is fragile. Beneath the surface of markets and performances, unresolved tensions remain. Some allies feel abandoned by the truce, others constrained by it. Old ambitions, merely paused, begin to stir again. The peace has not reconciled visions of power, it has only delayed their collision. In Athens, voices grow bolder in private spaces. Some argue that restraint has gone too far, that opportunity waits for those willing to seize it. Others warn that the city has already paid too high a price. These debates are quieter than before, but no less intense. In Sparta, similar undercurrents move beneath the calm. The peace is honored, but watched. Trust is extended, but measured. The war may be resting, but it is not forgotten. And still, for a time, life continues. Children grow. Art is made. Trade flows. The Greek world experiences something rare amid prolonged conflict, a pause that feels almost like hope. It is not the hope of resolution, but the hope of continuity, the belief that tomorrow might resemble today, and that today is bearable. As nights grow calmer and days pass without marching armies, the peace proves its quiet value. It does not promise permanence, it offers recovery. And in that modest offering, Greece accepts what it can, aware that beneath the calm surface, deeper currents remain.
The peace holds, but it does not sink into the ground. It rests lightly on the Greek world, like mist at dawn, visible, comforting, and easily disturbed. As days pass without marching armies, people begin to sense what the truce truly is, not an ending, but an arrangement. The war has stepped back, not disappeared. In quiet rooms and shaded courtyards, conversations return to questions left unresolved. What was gained? What was lost? Who benefited from the pause, and who paid its price? These questions are rarely spoken aloud in public, but they circulate in private, shaping mood and expectation. In some cities, the peace feels protective, a chance to rebuild and recover. In others, it feels like a frozen injustice, preserving imbalances created during the fighting. Allies reassess loyalties with careful restraint. The truce promises stability, yet it also locks old wounds in place. Over time, the calm begins to reveal its limits. Small incidents test the agreement. Minor disputes, delayed obligations, misunderstandings that linger longer than they should. Each one is addressed, smoothed over, and formally resolved, yet the effort required feels heavier each time. Trust does not grow, it is rationed. The peace demands constant maintenance, and even then, it never feels secure. In Athens, a subtle restlessness emerges beneath the routines of recovery.
The city has tasted restraint and found it difficult. Some voices, once quiet, begin to argue that the pause is a missed opportunity, that power unused fades. Others caution against returning to the strain that nearly broke the city. These opposing instincts, ambition and caution, exist side by side, unresolved. In Sparta, the mood is no less complex. Discipline holds, but watchfulness sharpens. The truce is honored because order demands it, not because faith has been restored. Each side studies the other, not openly but attentively, measuring movements, words, and silences. Across Greece, the world appears peaceful, yet it is a peace that requires constant attention. Festivals are held, but speeches are carefully phrased. Trade flourishes, but routes are watched. Theaters perform stories of reconciliation and restraint, while audiences sense the tension beneath the lessons. The war has retreated into memory, but memory remains active. Time passes, and the 10-year promise of the truce begins to feel long and short at once. Long enough to imagine permanence, short enough to anticipate its end. The pause changes the shape of the conflict rather than resolving it. When people look ahead, they do not ask whether war will return, but how and when. The peace has done its work. It has allowed recovery, reflection, and reorientation. But it has not altered the underlying currents that pulled the Greek world toward conflict in the first place. As nights settle gently over quiet cities and days unfold without alarms, the calm proves valuable but incomplete. It offers rest, not resolution. And in that quiet truth lies the uneasy legacy of the truce, a reminder that some conflicts do not end when weapons fall silent, but wait patiently beneath the surface for history to call them back.
In the quiet years after the fragile peace, when Athens believed it had learned restraint, a new idea begins to circulate, not shouted in the assembly at first, but whispered in corners, discussed late at night, carried on the confidence that had slowly returned. The war with Sparta has paused, yet ambition has not. It waits patiently for a new direction. Far across the sea lies Sicily, and upon that island the wealthy city of Syracuse. To many Athenians, Syracuse feels distant enough to be abstract, close enough to be tempting. It is described not as a threat, but as an opportunity, a place rich in grain, resources, and influence, a place whose fall, it is suggested, would tilt the balance of the entire Greek world. The idea is intoxicating because it promises resolution without revisiting old wounds. No more waiting behind walls, no more patient endurance, just one decisive expansion carried out far from home where the past feels lighter. In the Athenian assembly, debate returns, not the careful, weary debate of the plague years, but something sharper, brighter. Voices rise again with confidence, and among them stands Alcibiades, young, charismatic, and restless. He speaks of Sicily as though it is already understood, already within reach. His words do not dwell on difficulty, they glide over distance, resistance, uncertainty. He frames the expedition not as a gamble, but as a continuation of Athenian destiny. To hesitate, he suggests, is to shrink. To act is to secure the future. Others urge caution. They speak of overextension, of unfamiliar terrain, of a war that has already taken too much. But the mood of the city has shifted. After years of restraint and loss, confidence feels like relief. The memory of suffering fades just enough to make risks seem manageable. The assembly listens, weighs, and ultimately leans forward. The decision does not feel reckless in the moment, it feels bold. When the expedition is approved, preparation begins with an energy unseen for years. Shipyards awaken, supplies are gathered, crews assemble with anticipation rather than dread.
The city watches the harbor fill once more, sails catching the light, oars resting in neat rows. There is excitement in the air, mixed with pride. Parents speak of glory, young men imagine distant shores. Even those who doubt feel carried along by momentum. Yet beneath this surface, something uneasy stirs. The peace at home remains fragile. The war with Sparta has not ended, and Sicily is not empty space. It is its own world, with its own alliances and ambitions. But these thoughts are softened, pushed aside by optimism. The night before departure, Athens feels alive in a way it has not for years. Torches flicker along the streets, conversations linger. The sea reflects light calmly, as if offering reassurance. No one speaks of failure, no one names the risk aloud. The expedition sails not into chaos, but into confidence. And it is precisely this calm assurance that marks the turning point. For the audience listening now, the knowledge arrives quietly. This is where the war changes its shape, not through anger or desperation, but through belief. Belief that distance equals safety, that ambition equals control. The ships move steadily away from the familiar shoreline, carrying not just soldiers and supplies, but the weight of a decision that cannot be recalled. The lights of Athens fade behind them, and with them the certainty that restraint had once provided. The sea remains calm, the sails remain full, and the shadow of Syracuse stretches silently across the water.
The voyage to Sicily unfolds under calm skies, and at first everything seems to confirm Athens' confidence. The sea accepts the fleet without resistance. Days pass in measured rhythm, oars dipping, sails adjusting, the horizon widening and then narrowing again. On deck there is conversation and quiet laughter, the kind that grows when danger still feels distant. The scale of the expedition itself feels reassuring. So many ships, so many hands, so much preparation. It feels impossible in these early moments to imagine failure. When the Athenian fleet finally reaches Sicilian waters, the sight is impressive even to those who expected grandeur. Harbors fill with movement. The presence of Athens announces itself not with violence, but with sighs. Yet Sicily does not respond as hoped. The cities do not fall into line. Allies hesitate. Neutral powers watch. Syracuse remains intact, alert, and unmoved by intimidation. What was imagined as swift persuasion becomes prolonged negotiation and cautious maneuvering. Time begins to stretch. Supplies must be managed carefully. Every decision now depends not on enthusiasm, but on endurance. The campaign does not collapse, it slows. Weeks turn into months. The rhythms of home fade. Familiar references lose meaning. The distance from Athens grows not just in miles, but in feeling. News arrives late. Instructions feel outdated by the time they are received. Leadership becomes fragmented. Early in the campaign, accusations and sudden reversals unsettle command. Alcibiades, once the loudest voice urging the expedition, is removed from the center of events, leaving behind a vacuum that is never fully filled. Those who remain are capable, cautious, and burdened by the weight of decisions made far from home. They proceed carefully, but caution alone cannot replace clarity. Meanwhile, Syracuse adapts. The city learns. Defenses strengthen. The longer the Athenians stay, the more familiar the terrain becomes, not to them, but to their opponents. What was meant to be decisive becomes uncertain. Nights grow longer. Camps settle into routine. The soundscape changes again, from excitement to effort. Tools scrape earth, voices lower, fires burn shorter. There is no panic, only persistence. But persistence consumes resources.
Food grows harder to secure. Morale thins quietly, like rope worn by constant strain. Reinforcements arrive, offering brief relief, but they also deepen commitment. To withdraw now feels unthinkable. Too much has been invested. The sea, once a symbol of freedom, now feels like distance made physical. Each ship ties the army further to an outcome it cannot clearly see. The campaign continues not because victory feels close, but because turning back feels heavier. This is how hope changes shape. It no longer shines, it endures. And endurance without momentum becomes exhaustion. As seasons pass in Sicily, the war elsewhere continues, unnoticed by those so far from its center. Athens waits without knowing. The fleet waits without resting. The glow of initial confidence dims, replaced by steady effort and unspoken doubt. No single moment marks the shift. It happens gradually, like twilight settling. The expedition has not yet failed, but it is no longer ascending. It drifts, held in place by its own weight, moving forward because stopping seems impossible. And beneath the steady creak of ships and tents, beneath the measured orders and controlled patience, the sense grows, quietly, unmistakably, that this journey has carried Athens further than it ever intended to go.
The end does not arrive as a single moment. It comes gradually, like light withdrawing from a room. By the time the Athenians realize how far the balance has shifted, there is no clear direction left to move. The campaign has consumed seasons, supplies, and certainty alike. Decisions feel heavier now, each one made with the knowledge that options have narrowed. The sea, once open and promising, feels constrained. Harbors that once offered shelter now feel watched. Movements are cautious, measured, and increasingly reactive. Syracuse has learned the rhythm of its opponent. The Athenians feel it in the air, in the way their presence is anticipated rather than surprised. Attempts to regain momentum do not fail loudly, they simply do not succeed. Progress stalls, delays compound. The fleet waits for openings that do not come. Night after night, torches burn lower, then are extinguished earlier. Conversation grows sparse. Sleep comes unevenly. There is no panic, only a deepening fatigue that presses down on thought itself. When withdrawal is considered, it no longer feels like retreat, but like recognition. Yet even recognition comes late. The final movements are slow and constrained, shaped by necessity rather than choice. The sea, which carried the expedition out in confidence, now carries it back in fragments. Ships are lost not in spectacle, but in sequence, until the harbor no longer fills with familiar silhouettes. The sense of scale that once reassured now magnifies loss. Those who remain find themselves surrounded not by noise, but by stillness. Captivity follows not as chaos, but as containment. The surviving Athenians are gathered and held in places that were never meant to hold so many lives. Days blur together. Sunlight becomes a measure of endurance rather than time. Thirst and exhaustion settle into routine. Memory becomes a refuge. People speak quietly of home, not with longing, but with a strange calm, as if naming something that belongs to another life. Leadership offers what it can: composure, shared presence, and the dignity of acknowledgement. Nicias stands among those whose decisions brought the expedition here, carrying the weight without protest. There are no speeches of defiance, no promises of reversal, only the steady acceptance of what has unfolded. Far away, Athens does not yet know. The city sleeps while its fate shifts.
The failure in Sicily is not just military, it is emotional, psychological, and irreversible. When word eventually travels home, it will not arrive as a detailed account, but as an absence. Ships that do not return, voices that do not answer. The silence will speak first, and in that silence, Athens will understand that the war has entered a new phase shaped by loss that cannot be undone. For now, the story settles into quiet. The torches have gone out, the sea is dark, and the long shadow of Syracuse stretches back across the water, reaching toward a city that once believed distance could protect ambition.
The final years do not announce themselves with thunder. They arrive like a slow current, barely noticed at first, then impossible to ignore. After the disaster in Sicily, Athens still stands, but something essential has been thinned. The city's confidence at sea, once effortless, once assumed, now feels cautious, even fragile. Ships are fewer. Crews are harder to replace. Every voyage carries more weight than before. And while Athens recovers slowly, its old rival begins to change in a way few had imagined. Sparta, long a power of land and discipline, turns its gaze toward the water. This shift does not come from inspiration alone. It comes quietly, through whispered agreements and distant coffers. From the east, the resources of Achaemenid Empire begin to flow. Gold crosses borders without ceremony, exchanged for influence and promise. With Persian support, Sparta learns the language of the sea. Shipyards appear where none had mattered before. Oars are cut, hulls are laid. Sailors are trained with patience rather than haste. The process is unglamorous and methodical, perfectly suited to Spartan temperament. Athens notices, but too late to dismiss it as imitation. The balance that once felt permanent begins to tilt. Along the coastlines of Ionia, cities that had lived under Athenian protection start to reconsider their loyalties. Tribute feels heavier now that protection seems uncertain. Rebellion does not explode, it spreads. One city hesitates, another follows. Messages are sent, alliances renegotiated, flags changed quietly at night. Athens responds where it can, but response costs energy it no longer has in abundance. The empire that once rested on confidence now depends on effort. At home, the strain shows in subtler ways. Politics lose their steadiness. Fear and urgency enter debates that once relied on patience. Trust in institutions weakens as outcomes grow unpredictable. Experiments in leadership replace continuity. Democratic ideals bend, then snap back, then bend again as factions promise stability through control or freedom through reform. None fully deliver. The city feels as though it is arguing with itself while the world moves on. And yet, Athens does not simply collapse. There are moments, brief, luminous, when the old skill returns. Fleets are rebuilt with determination. Commanders adapt. Battles are won against expectation. The sea remembers Athens, at least for a while. These victories do not restore the past, but they delay the future. They offer the city time to breathe, to believe that recovery is still possible. But time itself has changed sides. Sparta's presence at sea grows steadier, more confident. Persian gold continues to smooth the way, ensuring supplies and loyalty where enthusiasm alone might fail. The war enters its final shape not as a rush toward destruction, but as a narrowing.
options reduce, margins thin. Each decision carries consequence without room for correction. The sense of an ending approaches without urgency. It feels inevitable, not dramatic. Like a river nearing the sea, the conflict gathers all its earlier paths into a single direction. For those living through it, the calm is unsettling. There are fewer surprises now. The pattern is clearer. Athens fights on, not out of arrogance, but out of habit and hope. Sparta advances, not in fury, but with persistence newly learned. And somewhere beneath the surface, the old certainty that the sea belonged to Athens slips quietly away.
As pressure builds from without, Athens begins to feel it from within. The war no longer presses only at the borders or across the sea. It enters the city's own conversations, its assemblies, its private rooms. Exhaustion has altered patience, and patience has altered trust. The confidence that once allowed disagreement to coexist with unity has thinned. Politics, once a forum for direction, becomes a mirror of anxiety. Voices rise not because ideas are stronger, but because fear has grown quieter and closer. In this climate, stability feels negotiable. Leadership changes hands more abruptly. Promises grow shorter. The city experiments with itself, searching for a form that might survive what lies ahead. Democratic processes are questioned, paused, reshaped, then restored, not out of conviction, but necessity. Each shift claims to be temporary, none feel entirely reversible. The people adapt because adaptation has become instinct, yet each adjustment leaves a trace. Decision-making grows narrower, responsibility concentrates. When outcomes disappoint, blame travels quickly. The war tightens as these internal motions continue. On the water, Athens still fights. Fleets sail with care, guided by experience, sharpened by loss. And there are moments, unexpected and precise, when the old mastery surfaces again. Engagements are won, routes are reopened. For a brief span, hope lifts its head. These victories arrive quietly, without celebration, as if even success has learned restraint. But they do not accumulate. Each one costs more than the last. Resources drain faster than morale can refill. Sparta's presence at sea, once unthinkable, now feels permanent. Supported by Persian wealth and steady learning, it applies pressure patiently. No single blow is decisive. Instead, opportunities close. Allies hesitate longer before responding to Athens' calls. Neutral cities wait for outcomes rather than promises. The empire's outer edges continue to loosen, not through rebellion alone, but through fatigue. Athens senses this erosion and works against it, but the work is constant and unrewarding. Inside the city, the population lives between news and rumor. Reports arrive delayed, incomplete, and filtered through uncertainty. Each announcement is weighed, not just for content, but for implication. Confidence flickers, fear remains contained. Life continues, markets open, ships unload, children grow, but beneath routine lies awareness. The war has narrowed the future. Possibility feels constrained. And yet, there is no surrender of spirit. The city endures because it knows no other way. Athens has always believed in effort, in the ability of action to shape outcome. That belief persists, even as evidence grows thin. The conflict now feels less like a contest and more like a compression. Space to maneuver diminishes. Time feels borrowed. Each choice draws the city closer to a moment that cannot be deferred forever. And still, everything moves calmly. No alarms ring, no final speeches are given. The war continues to tighten, gently but relentlessly,
like a current drawing a vessel toward open water where turning back is no longer possible.
As the war narrows towards its final shape, Athens does not collapse into panic. It adjusts. The city has learned, through years of waiting and loss, how to move within constraint. Daily life continues with a careful steadiness. Markets open and close on time. Ships still arrive, though fewer, their holds lighter. Conversations remain measured. People listen more than they speak. The sense of an ending grows not as dread, but as awareness, like noticing the tide has begun to turn. On the sea, the balance is now unmistakably delicate. Athens sails with skill sharpened by necessity, but each voyage feels provisional. Sparta's fleet moves with increasing confidence, its presence steady and patient, supported by resources that do not run dry. The sea no longer belongs to one city, it belongs to whoever can remain there longest. This change is felt quietly, in decisions made earlier than before, in routes avoided, in opportunities left untouched. At home, politics settle into a muted rhythm. After years of internal motion, extremes lose appeal. There is little appetite for grand experiments now. What remains is pragmatism, a focus on holding together what can still be held. Assemblies meet, orders are issued. The machinery of the city functions, not with optimism, but with resolve. The people understand the cost of disruption too well to invite it again. News from afar arrives with fewer surprises. Each report confirms what has already been sensed. Allies drift, neutral cities wait. The outer world no longer responds to Athens' voice with the same urgency. This does not provoke outrage, it provokes silence. Acceptance begins to form, not of defeat, but of limitation. The war has taught Athens the boundaries of effort. And still, there are moments when the city remembers itself. Training continues, repairs are made, plans are drawn with care. The belief that discipline and intelligence matter has not vanished, it has become quieter. Even hope has changed. It no longer imagines reversal, it imagines dignity. The sense that whatever comes next should be met without haste or spectacle. The approach of the end feels calm because it has been prepared for, piece by piece, over years. Loss has taught restraint. Fatigue has taught focus. The city does not rush to its conclusion, it walks toward it. On the water, movements slow, engagements are cautious. Commanders measure not just the chance of success, but the cost of continuation. Time feels thick, layered with memory. The war's earlier chaos has given way to clarity. Everyone understands what is at stake and what is no longer possible. And in this understanding, there is a strange peace, not the peace of victory or agreement, but the peace of alignment, when expectations and reality finally match. Athens remains proud, not loudly, but inwardly. It has endured more than it believed possible. As the current carries events forward, the city prepares not with speeches, but with readiness. The end does not rush in. It approaches quietly, like dusk spreading across familiar streets, changing color rather than form. And in that gentle fading light, Athens stands alert, exhausted, and composed, aware that the war's final chapter is close and ready to meet it without illusion. The end arrives without warning bells. It comes on a calm morning, when the sea looks ordinary, and the air carries no urgency. From the heights of Athens, distant sails appear, not bearing familiar colors, not returning from trade or patrol, but moving steadily, patiently toward control. These are not Athenian ships. The city understands this before any messenger speaks. Far away, near the quiet waters of Aegospotami, the last Athenian fleet has already been undone, not through dramatic confrontation, but through exposure and exhaustion. Ships caught at rest, crews scattered. The sea, once Athens' greatest ally, offers no shelter now. With that moment, resistance on the water ends, not loudly, but completely. News reaches Athens slowly, filtered through silence. No new ships arrive, no countermovements follow. The city waits, then realizes there is nothing left to wait for. Sparta does not rush. It closes in with the patience it has learned. The harbors are sealed. The routes that once fed the city grow quiet. Grain does not arrive. Trade pauses. Inside the walls, life narrows. Hunger spreads, not as panic, but as gradual awareness. Each day feels thinner than the last. Conversations shorten. Effort becomes conservation. Athens does not collapse into chaos, it contracts. The long walls that once promised protection now hold stillness. The city understands, slowly and collectively, that the war has reached its final shape. There will be no rescue from the sea, no sudden reversal. The decision to surrender does not feel like betrayal, it feels like recognition. When terms are accepted, they arrive without ceremony. The fleet is gone. The empire dissolves quietly. The walls of Piraeus are taken apart stone by stone, not as spectacle, but as closure. The sound of their dismantling is not violent, it is methodical. With each section removed, a chapter closes. Athens remains, but it is no longer an empire. The war that lasted 27 years ends not with triumph, but with stillness. The streets are calm, the people endure. The city breathes in a new way, smaller, restrained, and deeply aware of what has been lost. And yet, life does not end, it changes shape. The long conflict leaves behind a city that remembers too much to rush forward and too much to forget.
The war ends, but its echo remains, spreading beyond Athens into the wider Greek world. Victory does not bring lasting strength to Sparta. Exhaustion has touched everyone. The cities of Greece emerged diminished, weary and divided, their resources spent and their trust eroded. In the quiet that follows, space opens for new powers. To the north, Macedonia waits, watching a world weakened by its own struggle. The Peloponnesian War has resolved nothing permanently. It has merely cleared the ground. What endures most clearly is not who won, but what was revealed. Thucydides leaves behind his account, measured, restrained, almost cold in tone. He does not comfort, he observes. He records how fear shapes decisions, how power invites overreach, how confidence erodes into necessity. His history does not seek heroes, it studies patterns.
And in those patterns, the war continues to speak long after the fighting stops. Athens, stripped of empire, remains a city of memory and thought. It does not vanish, it adapts. The lessons of the long war settle slowly into culture, into philosophy, into caution. What once felt eternal is revealed as fragile. What once felt secure is shown to depend on circumstance. As the story draws to a close, the tone softens. There is no condemnation here, only understanding. Civilizations rise not because they are invincible, but because conditions allow them to. They fall not from a single blow, but from accumulation of fear, ambition, exhaustion. And so, as night returns to the Aegean, the listener is invited to release the weight of the story. Imagine the small boats drifting across dark water, their wakes fading behind them. Power recedes, fear loosens its grip, history becomes distance. Let the long war rest now. Let its lessons remain, quiet and undemanding. And as the sea settles once more, allow your thoughts to slow, your breath to deepen, and everything that has been carried here to drift gently away.